All right, here we are. Happy Sunday, everyone. I hope you're all having a great start to, gosh, I can't believe it's March already, but we have a great lesson for you. Maybe you're a parent, maybe you're an adult, and you just can't seem to figure out what is going on inside your teenager's head. So that's what this is all about, the teen brain. It's an awesome, amazing lesson. We're going to have a quick 15 or 20-minute video that Dr. E, the amazing Miss Elizabeth Lombardo, and she put that together for us. And then she's going to jump on here live. And we got a bunch of questions printed off that you guys have submitted. So excited to dive into these. And then whatever questions you guys have, you can ask them live here, hopefully in the chat on the Zoom or maybe in the Facebook. So with no further ado, let's get to it. Let's start this video. Excited for you guys to check this out. And I am going to keep my camera on. Is that what I'm being told? I need to make you the host. Okay. Alrighty, so here is the video and I am turning off my camera. I'm doing what I'm being told not to do because I'm a maverick.
Hey there, it's Dr. E here today to talk to you about the teen brain. Do you ever feel like your child has been abducted by aliens and replaced with someone who looks the same but acts so completely different than before they became a teen? Do you ever scratch your head or feel like scratching your eyes out in reaction to what they do or say? Do you ever feel frustrated by their behavior? Maybe it's procrastination, forgetfulness, or being overly emotional. Well, guess what? A lot of this has to do with the teen brain. What happens inside the brain of a teenager? Well, let's watch this video to find out.
Being a teenager is hard, and so is living with one, I'm told. No human gets to escape this moody, angsty, confusing phase, and interestingly, such an extended adolescence is unique to humans. Other animals grow up a lot faster than we do. And you may think our teen years are just about streamlining bodies for baby making, but as it turns out, the storms of sex hormones that we associate with the teenage years are only a small part of what's really going on in the teenage body. Most of the action, it turns out, is happening in the brain. Until fairly recently, we thought that the brain finished the nuts and bolts of its development by the time we started kindergarten. But really, right as puberty rolls in, it undergoes massive remodeling. This amounts to several years of neural growing pains, as well as the other more visible growth that's going on all over your body. So take heart, whether you're going through it now, are about to go through it, or count yourself among the veterans of that turbulent decade. Know that the result of the teen years is a stronger, faster, more sophisticated brain. There's someone who told me that 20 years ago. Let's start with that obvious scapegoat of adolescent anguish, hormones. That word itself is kind of a lazy shorthand that people use to describe the chemicals that some of our glands excrete that can affect our behavior. But the fact is, hormones have all kinds of jobs that have nothing to do with where you grow hair or what turns you on or whether you feel glum for no apparent reason. Hormones keep your heart beating and your body hydrated, and they make your organs grow and make you grow bone and muscle and skin. What people actually mean when they talk about teenage hormones are sex hormones. And yes, puberty involves a whole series of sex hormone storms, the first of which actually kicks in before you're out of primary school. That's when the adrenal glands start secreting androgens, which trigger the growth and activity of the skin's sebaceous glands, making skin more oily. Soon enough, more apocrine or sweat glands get activated, increasing body odor. Then comes the wave of hormonal agents that start activating the gonads. For boys, this influx of luteinizing hormones from the pituitary gland get testosterone brewing in the testes, and suddenly, that guy has up to 50 times more testosterone than he did before puberty. This also changes the shape of the male body, promoting hair growth and building up lean muscle mass, just as the increased presence of estrogen in girls rearranges the deposition of their fat, stimulating the growth of breasts. Humans are actually lucky to experience the craziness of puberty only once. Many other animals undergo multiple similarly intense hormonal rodeos as they enter sexually active periods, sometimes called the rut or heat, every new breeding season. Some male species completely stop eating during their breeding period because they're just that sex crazed. And yet, all that said, teens are far less ruled than their hormones than you might think. There are other factors at play here. For example, your favorite moody teen may be by turns punchy, angry, depressed, or in a zombie-like fog because of their chronic lack of sleep. Sleep is vital to everyone, but it's especially important for kids and teens because it's during sleep that your pituitary gland releases an essential growth hormone necessary for development. A normal sleep cycle driven by circadian rhythm is regulated by the daytime release of cortisol, which helps you wake up, and melatonin, which helps you wind down when it gets dark. But this biology of sleep timing changes as we age, and as puberty begins, teens' sleep clocks get pushed back. Most adults start oozing melatonin around 10 p.m.-ish, but one study showed that teenagers don't start producing melatonin until closer to 1 a.m. This may be because puberty's hormonal frenzy is stalling the release of melatonin, and could partly explain why so many teens stay up late, energized by the night, but have a really hard time rolling out of bed with the alarm. Of course, it's a bit of a chicken and egg deal, since watching reruns of The Simpsons and playing Call of Duty late into the night continues to stimulate the brain, which may further delay the release of melatonin. Still, some researchers are starting to advocate for pushing back high school start times in the morning in the hopes of having more focused students. So we got sex hormones changing the bodies and a lack of sleep to contend with, but increasing evidence suggests that there is something much bigger at work that's making teenagers so teenagery. Their brains. It turns out that brains actually take longer than we thought to fully mature. I don't mean physical size. Our brains are already about 95% full size by the time we're just 6, but more in the sense of the connections inside the brain. Adults, for the most part, know how to make decisions by evaluating choices and weighing consequences. They do this with their prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for controlling impulses and emotions and forming judgments. Its neurons chat with the neurons in other regions of the brain responsible for, say, memory or movement through synapses. Thing is, teenage brains don't quite work like this yet. The prefrontal cortex may not be fully developed until your mid-20s, and teen synapses, those lines of communication, are still growing and specializing. They're also slow. As an adolescent brain keeps developing, its axons, the long tail-like parts of the neurons that transmit signals to other neurons, become more and more insulated by a fatty layer called the myelin sheath. This padding greatly increases the cell's transmission speed, and while it helps adults make faster decisions, it isn't fully formed in teens. These changes occur slowly, beginning at the back of the brain where the oldest and most fundamental brain parts reside, and slowly working its way forward to the more advanced and complicated brain bits. The prefrontal cortex is the last to be hooked up and shaped. So it's important to keep in mind that just because your favorite teenagers stayed up until sunrise binge-watching The Walking Dead the night before an exam, it doesn't mean they're dumb or lazy. Their brains are just literally finishing being built. But at the same time, because all this brain building is just starting to peak, this is also when the brain starts getting thinned out. You actually start losing connections that you don't use enough in a process called synaptic pruning, which has led to a theory that this is kind of a use it or lose it phase. Meaning, adolescence could be an especially important time to use your brain. Play an instrument, engage in sports, write poetry, learn a language. Because by doing these things, you're helping hardwire those synapses and giving your brain topiary a lovely, lasting shape. Whereas, if you're sitting around all day playing Candy Crush, those will be the connections that survive, which you don't need. This shaping of the teen brain manifests itself in other ways too, like in teenage attitudes. A group of scientists at the McLean Hospital in Massachusetts once hooked up a group of adults and a group of teens to MRI devices and then asked them to identify a series of expressions on photographs of adult faces. Interestingly, while adults correctly identified one expression as fear, the teenagers thought the faces showed anger, surprise, or shock. They weren't registering subtlety as well. Not only that, but the MRI images showed that adults and teens responded with different parts of their brains. Adults used the reasonable prefrontal cortex, while the teens mostly used the gut reaction emotional amygdala, located farther back in the brain. Results like these might help explain why teenagers seem to experience frequent mood swings. For one, they tend to react quickly from the emotional part of their brain without running those reactions by the more rational frontal cortex, and two, it could be that they're just misreading expressions and therefore the intentions behind them. The frontal cortex also helps people relate to and understand each other, and you can imagine what happens when concern is misjudged as anger or worry as disappointment. The Fresh Prince has an entire song about it. But the truth is, as much as parents just don't understand, teens don't always understand either. When the emotional amygdala and the more rational cortex aren't fully hooked up yet, that can make it hard for teenagers to productively work through emotions. This kind of reactionary, impulsive behavior may also lead to more risk-taking. Adolescence is the time when we're most likely probably to experiment with whatever booze, drugs, or toad licking is available, and unfortunately, it's also the time our developing brains are most vulnerable to lasting effects. Studies have shown that teens are more likely to become addicted to drugs and alcohol than adults, partly because their brains are more attuned to their reward centers. While the teenage prefrontal cortex is still developing, their nucleus accumbens, or pleasure and reward zone, forms early on. Neuroimaging studies have shown that when presented with a big potential reward, teen brains light up way more than kids' or adults' brains. But if the reward was small, teen brains hardly fired at all. So basically, give an adolescent a pat on the back, and you'll get a shrug. Give them a hot date or a winning goal, and their brains light up like Vegas. This, of course, does not always result in great judgment. A jacked up, thrill-seeking impulse combined with an exquisite pang of peer pressure, plus a new driver's license, new sex parts, and access to substances can lead to some not good results. But still, this long and sometimes tedious remodeling process that our bodies go through in the teenage years isn't all bad. Many scientists have pointed out that our delayed adolescence lets our brains keep their flexibility longer, which, yeah, may make teens a little slow, but also more adaptable as they prepare for the adult world. In this way, you can see teen impulsiveness as boldness or independent thinking, and moodiness as a source of newfound empathy, and excitability as passion. Which means there's a lot of awesome energy floating around out there ready to decrease all kinds of world suck. Thanks for watching.
So what are the take-home lessons from that video about the teen brain? Well, first, the teen brain functions differently from the adult brain. Second, some of it is positive, right? A teen brain is more flexible, it's more adaptable, and it's really more ready to learn. Third, other components are less positive, right? That prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for controlling impulses and emotions and forming judgments, that doesn't fully develop until the mid-20s. Four, the amygdala, which is part of that limbic system, is more developed. So this results in greater emotional reasoning instead of rational thinking with the prefrontal cortex. Right? This is also what happens when people get into the red zone. So our teens are actually more predisposed to be in that red zone. 5, perceived laziness, being more emotional, engaging in greater risk-taking, focusing more on immediate pleasures, and misreading expressions. So for example, concern may be misjudged as anger, or worry as disappointment. These can all be attributed to a teen's brain. And 6, sleep issues can be caused by the teen brain. Melatonin in a teen brain starts producing at 1 a.m. versus an adult's 10 p.m. And that melatonin is what signals them to get to sleep. So with this understanding, do we just let teens act the way that they want? Of course not, right? That's where you as a parent come in, to apply the skills you learn here to help your child be more rational, make smarter choices, and thrive through their adolescence. Yes, it is important for teens to gain skills, to optimize their mindset, right, and be responsible for their actions. And I don't have to tell you, they cannot do it alone. Effectively parenting a teen is a whole new ballgame as opposed to when we were younger. If you truly want your child to be happy, healthy, and successful, as I know you do, it's vital that you apply the skills that work when it comes to raising the teen. Keep that teen brain in mind as you help your children get the skills to optimize their mindset so that they can thrive. And don't worry, you are not alone. We are here to support you.
All right. And we're back, and there we have it. Dr. E, if you're here, which I think you are, can we see that wonderful face?
So,
there it is.
hello, I was so laughing because I obviously did not record that today. And I'm like I'm not wearing the same thing, but it's the same color and it's the same style. So we'll just call that brand. You know, it's within my brand as opposed to I don't have much creativity when it comes to my clothing.
I feel like that's a major issue now because everyone would talk about the red carpet. And once you wear it on the red carpet, everyone's seen it, all the pictures, you can't do it. And now we all live on a red carpet with our own, Instagram, Facebook, social media pages. So it ruined it. You can only wear it once.
Well, that's not happening. And it's funny you said that because I just hired a social media strategist because I think it's important to have someone else on my payroll when it comes to my marketing.
Okay.
Instead of
Taking
doing that.
notes, taking notes.
So if you all are not following me yet on Instagram, I highly recommend you do so, because we're going to have some really terrific content, not just about teens, but about peak performance in general and how we can be our best selves.
But you
I
have
didn't
even
even mean
before,
for that to be a plug, but I just thought I'd say that.
well, even before this strategist came along,
Nice.
I feel like you were putting out some good stuff. Like I see it
you.
on there. Like there was some we were posting. So it's just a different, just kind of a different approach. I know you weren't doing it, but
So no, it's my stuff. It's all my stuff. No, but what I was going to say was my oldest goes to college now, and her roommate and another one of her friends every day get on my Instagram and they talk about it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's it's so great. It's not
It's
just my mom looking anymore.
it's just a little coffee. They have their little coffee in the morning and they're like, all right, what did
Get
Dr.
the advice from Dr. E, which, I mean, my clients made me do that, but I think it's funny when, your kids
Yeah.
friends are doing. I remember once, totally unrelated, but I remember once my nephew, who was a senior in high school, emailed me. He's like, I was just looking at dating advice and you were quoted in the article. And I was like, all right.
Hey, maybe you'll listen to me now. It's in an article. It must be
It
legit.
must be good then. Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. I like to start my day actually with we shout him out. I feel like we've actually talked about him before. Darren Hardy. He does these little 5-minute videos that are the Darren Daily. There's
I
a picture.
used to have my picture with him, but I don't anymore.
I really like his stuff, and it's
Yeah.
really just
He's
like,
great.
hey, to start the day, let's just get a little positive message, and each time you can learn a little something, and it just is like kind of a habit now. It's like, all right, I get my little green drink and go from there.
Yeah.
But when it comes to social media, I was thinking the same thing. I have a big event coming up next month. It's the biggest one I've done in a while. It's 5,000 kids in
Nice.
Texas. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We got a lot of exciting things in the works. And it's like I was thinking about last night on my little bike ride that I do, thanks to you, my little mental health, 30, 40-minute bike ride at night. And I was like, I want every single one of these kids to follow me on social media, but I don't want them to follow me because of the vanity of having more followers. That ship has sailed for me at this point, right? But I just feel like so much of what they're putting in there, now we're really coming back full circle here, but in their teen brain is garbage. 90% of it, probably more than 90%, I feel like it's just internet pollution. They're watching what someone else is doing that isn't real. And I'm all about escapism. I was watching an episode of South Park earlier. I never watched it in a long time. And I'm like, this is so funny. I need to like take a break from working. It's Sunday and just watch something and laugh for 30 minutes. Right. And so that's why, like, for me, it was like, how do we get them on here so we can actually be doing exactly what you're doing with a really good strategy of some fun stuff to engage them and make it interactive, let them be able to have access to you, but then have the stuff that matters in those conversations. And I feel like that's so much of what I've learned about parenting from you and our time together here over the years is really like, you're there for them and you have open communication. And when they're ready, because you've built that trust by putting in the time, whether it's, throwing the ball around or going to get coffee or going on a walk, that trust has been built because you've done it with paying your dues with the time. So I don't know where that came from. I guess your social media,
but it just felt like sharing it. Yeah.
It got me excited. So
Good.
I don't know what changes have you seen? It seems like now we're on the social media thing, and then I got brain questions and our questions from our parents, but what big shifts have you seen, or do you know from the research has happened because of, social media? And I know there's the social dilemma and these different things out there that have put this message out there, but what have you seen change and what can we actually do about it? Because every time I hear one of these movies or one of these people on a big podcast, or I have an actual conversation with them, it's always like, yeah, I don't know. It's like, they don't have an answer, and I don't know if anyone does. So I just
they don't have an answer on what to do, or they don't have an answer on what's different.
They don't have an answer on like, how do we fix this thing that's clearly causing a big problem? Yeah.
I mean, we know emergency room visits for young women 12 to 17 increased by over 50%. Over 50% for suicidal attempts. Over 50%.
That's
what is happening? And I'll tell you, sometimes there's some there's some good on social media, which is, kind of what I'm trying to put out there. But a lot of times, I think the statistic, if I remember correctly, 70% of kids wish that their schools taught them about mental health and how to better cope, and they don't. And so they get on social media, and then they learn things like how to cut, right? Self-injurious behavior. We talked about that before. And they learn how to do it so that so that other people don't see it. They learn how to have an eating disorder. These are not the how-tos we want to be giving our children. So I think that the answer of what do we do is multifold. One is educating our kids about what's real. I always say, go with your gut. Go with your gut test. This is the test called Go With Your Gut. And, if you are on social media and it's making you feel worse, that's a red flag to say, stop, right? Get off that social media, stop following those particular people. Really encouraging our kiddos to listen to their intuition and what's going on inside of them, because they know it's not helpful. So that's one. Two, letting them know, there's still FOMO out there, that if they aren't watching things that are really disturbing, they may be missing out, but they're it's a huge gift to them, because when our brains are inundated with negativity, it just impacts our entire lives and our entire moods. Maybe I've shared the statistic before, but for all of us, right, kids and adults, watching the news for 3 minutes in the morning increases your chance of having a bad day by 27%. Why? Because especially in the morning, I know, especially in the morning, our brains are so suggestible when we go from awake to asleep and asleep to awake. So I would say, just for parents to do this themselves, but also to help them with their kids, really figure out, is this something that feels good or doesn't feel good? Is it making me happier, or is it making me feel worse about myself? And really listening to that and using that as a litmus test. The other thing, and this is not, when I say it, and I say it every single time I talk about social media, and I get a lot of pushback, and I respect that. Children should not have phones in their rooms at night. There's no reason why the phone, the computer, the iPad, whatever else, there's no need for that. And a lot of times kids will say, well, it's my alarm. Great, get an Alexa, get an alarm clock, right? Or like my daughter used to say, yeah, right. My daughter used to say she likes to listen to music or meditations to fall asleep. Alexa does that too. So we don't do it anymore because my kids are older, but we had downstairs in our family room, by 10 o'clock, it all needed to be there. And if they're still doing their homework, everything except the computer, what they're working on, and then that goes down too. So having that in our rooms is not helpful. And for parents either. I mean, I don't really get on social media, so I don't really, look at that kind of stuff too much. But as parents, we can be modeling this too.
So much there to unpack. I feel like it is, I the same thing. And I have to have the phone out of the room, because if I do, I'll start scrolling, or because otherwise maybe I'm thinking and I can't fall asleep, but I'm like, well, I might as well see if some emails came in, or look up this funny video, or that kind of thing. It's like, you don't have enough self-control, because we see how it's totally unraveling adults' lives. Yeah. And now we think that a teen with a developing brain is have from the top, architects that are putting these things together, from the top biggest companies in the world that put together casinos and gambling and made it addictive and had that adrenaline shot in our arms every time we refresh. It's like, oh, you don't stand a chance at this. Yeah, you don't stand a chance.
Yeah, in psychology, we call it variable reinforcement. So variable reinforcement means it's I also call it slot machine mentality. So when people do the slot machines, they never know when they're going to win, right? And it's not like every 5 minutes and then they win. It's not like every 5 times and then they win. There's no predictability. And that variable reinforcement is the best way to get someone to keep doing an activity. So you can use that positively with your children, but we can also remember that's exactly, that's what our phones are. Oh, I got a text, or, oh, that's an interesting post, and that kind of thing. The other thing I want to make sure, he's like, hold on, I got to check my social media. The other thing I didn't say that I need to say is limit your child's time, and frankly, your time on social media. Use the app that will shut down the social media accounts after a certain amount of time. I'm not going to tell you how long that is. That's something that you can figure out with your children. And parents, have the ultimate say, but you can talk about it with your children. but I will say I had a conversation a couple times with my kiddos about like, how much time do you think you should be on or make sense? And they said, you know, even less time than I thought they were going to say, more time than I thought was good. But it's interesting to ask your children that, because if they have an excuse, sometimes that's really what they need. Right. It's kind of like I work with a lot of teens who, you know, they talk about how they actually don't want to drink, right? Or they don't want to use drugs. And so I say, well, just tell your friends, if you don't feel comfortable just saying no, tell your friends that your parents are going to breathalyze you as soon as you get home, or they're going to drug test you. Even if they're not going to, you can say that and then, you know, feel more comfortable of not using.
I like that, but that's a great tactic of like, oh no, like we've done that before, even with like marketing and stuff. When you need like someone to pay a bill or that kind of thing, you have like basically kind of a fake person that's like, hey, HR or accounting, like Gwyneth over there, she is on my butt about this. It's not me. I'm sorry, I don't want to ask you, but Gwyneth, she will not leave me alone, and she's furious. And I got reamed out this morning.
Of course, Gwyneth is your alternate personality, but that's another conversation.
Yes, I'm bipolar. I should mention I'm bipolar. But so hey, everyone watching, whether you're doing it on Zoom or I think a few people are watching on Facebook, I'm getting the messages that are being asked sent over to me here in Slack. So keep whichever one you're on, feel free to ask those questions, and we will get some answers here from Dr. E. So Dr. E, question. As you were, well, okay, so there's two ways I could go, very much different ways. I'm gonna keep it on track, and I'll do my ADD, hey squirrel. We'll save that for later. So when you said kind of about not diagnosing, but that's what the parents have been saying to me this week. So this week I've did so many phone calls. I did about 12 to 15 calls a day with parents. It's been just crazy, you know, awesome conversations.
That program is very powerful for your teens. So I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah. So the good thing is we're having great conversations and gonna be able to help people, but the negative is that people are going through difficult things. And so one of the things that came up multiple times with people in different parts of the country is this self-diagnosing, where they're going online, like you said, whether it's Google search or anywhere on social media, and they're saying, I'm like, I was joking around about it, but I'm bipolar, X, Y, Z, and every other day they have some new, you know, ism or condition that they think that they are. And the mom's like, they're not any of these things. They're literally, it's all, you know, fear driven. And I was even on a call with one of the kids in our program, and I could see their YouTube. They shared their screen to show me some videos, and I could see what was on their YouTube history, and it was some of these things, and it broke my heart, you know. So what is the balance for, like, should kids, because I do that when I go to get something, like, oh, what is this rash? Like, I'm looking it up and I think I'm an expert.
And inevitably you're going to die from it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. What's the WebMD, right? WebMD told me I got full-blown AIDS, and I'll believe it. And I'm like, well, I don't know what's happening here. So what should we let kids do? Can we not? How do we? What is the play here with kids in self-diagnosing?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's to remind children, our kiddos, and frankly, I know adults who do this too, that you know, having some of the symptoms doesn't mean you have the diagnosis. Right. So I remember my sister calling me up many years ago, and she's like, oh my gosh, I have diabetes. And I was like, you do? She's like, yeah, I was on the subway. She lived in New York City at the time. I was on the subway and I saw a sign and it said, are you tired? Do you urinate frequently? And it was like all of these things that, like, in psychology, we call them the Barnum effect. The Barnum effect is everyone experiences it. Do you ever feel like you work harder than other people sometimes?
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you care more than others? Like these notions that we all experience. And then, so, you know, depressed. Do you feel sad more often than not? Yeah, sometimes, right? I mean, do you ever feel worried? Yeah, sometimes. But there's a difference between having some symptoms and a diagnosis. And the problem with having a diagnosis, in my opinion, is a lot of times people will, whether it's an accurate diagnosis or not, they will attribute negative things to the diagnosis. Oh, I'm so tired because of my depression. You're tired because you were up until 2:30 last night on your Xbox, right? That's why you're tired. It's not because of your if you have depression or not. So just, helping our kiddos be super aware that a couple of symptoms, it could easily be the Barnum effect. And, just to be really aware of diagnoses. Now, sometimes diagnoses actually help people. I'll give an example. I have a client who always felt a little bit different than everyone else. And he got on the internet and did a bunch of, self-reported tests. And he realized that he's probably on the spectrum, right? He's probably, really high functioning Asperger's, but he's probably a bit on the spectrum. And once he found that out, he felt so relieved. It gave him such relief because he was like, okay, it's nothing wrong with me. This is just the way my brain works.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can be helpful, but we just want to be super aware of, not over diagnosing and not over pathologizing, right? The training that we just did is really about the teen brain, and the teen brain that it can be really emotional, can have highs and lows. A lot of times people will say, is that bipolar? So are they bipolar? And no, it's just a teen brain.
Can we truly ever trust a teen brain? Or do we just got a bunch of psychopaths out? Because as we were watching that video earlier, I'm like, these are a bunch of psychopaths out here. We got a bunch of Ted Bundys running around with these undeveloped brains that are up and down. Can we ever trust a teen brain, Dr. E?
That's an excellent question, because even when our kids are really good kids, and even when you're having a conversation with them and you're talking about what would you do if, teens will act differently when they're with their friends. So it's not that they're psychopaths. Most of them are not going to be mass murderers, but it does remind us, one, that we want to just be aware of the teen brain, and two, if and when they make a mistake, they engage in risky behavior, that kind of thing, we want to address the behavior. We also want to address the why. What was their thinking process, and help them realize that even though they knew it was wrong, because usually they know it's wrong, what were they saying to themselves that caused them to go from, I'm not going to do that, I already told my mom I was going to do that, to, yeah, let me have that beer, right? What was the thinking? Because it can be super helpful for teens and parents to understand why they do what they do. We've talked about this before. I think the over-under principle for every overt or outward behavior, everything that our kids do, there's a positive underlying motivation. I'm going to say that again. Even if their behavior isn't good, they have a positive motivation. And think about when anyone out there has ever upset someone else or done something wrong. When we upset someone else, when we do something wrong, we usually have what I call yeah, but syndrome. Yeah, but syndrome is, yeah, I know that upset you, but here's why I did it, right? If I'm speeding and I get pulled over, not that I would, I might think, yeah, but I'm late for a meeting, or I'm late for my flight, or I got to get home to my kids, right? So we focus on our motivation, why we do what we do, even if it isn't positive. But when we look at someone else's behavior, like our kids, we focus on what they did wrong. And look at this. We're not having the same conversation. Your kids are thinking about why they did it. You're focused on what they did. And so they feel like they're not heard. So what you want to do is ask, take me through that decision-making process, right? I know you're a good person. I know you know right from wrong. And I'm sure there's a positive justification in your mind. Just help me understand that. And then not only will we as parents understand that, but then the child will understand, oh yeah, that's how I was thinking. Because here's the thing. Scientists estimate we have 60,000 thoughts racing through our head every single day. 60,000 thoughts. Even if we aren't aware of those thoughts, we are aware of the consequences of those thoughts. The consequences are how we feel and how we function, what we do. So helping your child verbalize that thinking process will help them be more aware, will help you understand them. And then you want to empathize and then say, given that, we'll go back to drinking. Given that you decided to drink because you felt really uncomfortable saying no, and you wanted to feel comfortable and you wanted to fit in, totally positive motivation. Haven't we all wanted to feel comfortable and fit in? Yeah. Given that, how can you make sure that you don't drink next time, change the behavior, and still feel comfortable and still feel empowered and still feel okay? So that's a real key. I mean, and frankly, this works with your partner too, but that's a real key to helping our kiddos with this teen brain that they're dealing with, so that they can better understand and we can help them problem solve.
Does it hurt, Dr. E?
I know, sometimes I feel like I answer a
Are you
question.
this smart? to
I'm
be
like,
this
no,
smart.
no,
I'm
but
just like,
sometimes I'm like, did I just talk for half an hour? I feel like
no,
there's a lot of
it's
crap that just came out of
amazing.
my mouth.
I'm like 60,000 thoughts. She must have 150 million thoughts because she's so good at this. No, it truly is. It truly is incredible. And what I'm hearing you say, and we come back to it a lot, and we haven't got to the one that I know we will at some point, it will come up, but it sounds like you're saying communication with your team is kind of important. Am I hearing that correctly?
Kind of important. And here's something interesting. And every time I don't, I just want to smack my face.
Jeez, don't do that.
What if we assumed positivity in our kids? Like, there have been times when I'm really upset at what my kids did. And then when they tell me their underlying motivation, their justification, I'm like, oh, well, if I thought like that, I would have made the same decision. Right? And
Yeah.
so how powerful, even if the behavior is wrong, to better understand and to come in from that, I know that there's a positive motivation. I know that. So let me figure out what that is. That's a whole different approach than my kid did something wrong, they're bad, or they're psychopaths. Children are not psychopaths.
So, okay, we have this teen brain that is just a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster of please don't be a psychopath emotion, right? We're going up and we're going down. And today it feels like every parent I talk to, 99.9% of parents, one of the first things they tell me is, oh, we went and saw a specialist. My kid is ADHD. It seems like we are so quick to put a diagnosis, a treatment, a thing, but some of this perhaps from what I'm taking from you is that, hey, this is just part of being a teen, a developing brain, becoming an adult human person. And sometimes for instance, I probably shouldn't say this. I hope my mother doesn't see this. Well, actually, this isn't about my family. This is about a friend of mine.
No, it's a client. Yeah.
A secret client. And my great grandmother was a rough, tough. She wore high heels. She's been gone for a long time. God rest her beautiful soul. But I remember meeting her for the first time when I was a little kid, and she was in her 80s wearing 4-inch high heels, fluorescent green, matching dress and a matching purse, dressed to the nines.
Funny.
And she was a little bit of a rough character. And so, today, if she was around in this era, they'd be like, well, she's, bipolar, and they would have given her 8 diagnoses, where back then you were just like, well, she's kind of and I would never say this, but people said she's kind of a B word. She's just kind of a unpleasant person to be around, and so today it's like, oh, if the person's down, they're depressed. If they're, anxious about a test or going in front of a bunch of people or performing in a sport or whatever that thing is, it's like, well, they have an anxiety disorder and stress, and you need to put them on Ritalin. And it's like, I am, of course, no doctor. We leave the doctor to you. But it seems like they're so quick to want to put people on medications, and we don't have to go down that road. But do you think part of this is just, it's the teen brain in the wild and communication and helping with decision making? But just because, like you said earlier, something's going on is a symptom doesn't mean it's necessarily that thing. You said it's the way you said it was so much more eloquent. Will you say
I don't know what comes out of my mouth. It just comes out, and then I'm like, okay.
the blackout, and it just comes out. But
It's like every time I'm on TV, I'm like, what did I say?
It went good. It went good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people are very quick to diagnose, and the teen brain is volatile. It's very emotional. Going back to ADHD, I mean, think about this. People with ADHD have difficulty concentrating. They have difficulty focusing, right? They tend to be, kind of move around a lot. Well, guess what? First of all, that's a teen brain to begin with.
Yeah.
Second of all, that's also sleep deprivation.
Okay, we got to talk about that next.
And over 80% of our teens are not getting the sleep that they need. So if we took all those kiddos who've been diagnosed with ADHD and we actually got them on a sleep regimen where they actually got the quality and the quantity of sleep that they needed, I would contend that most people would not meet criteria for teen ADHD. That's how powerful a lack of sleep is.
But how are we going to sleep, Dr. E, when there's so many lit TikToks that need to be watched? How can we have, how is this possible? What is going on
Go
here?
back to limiting time and get that thing out of your room.
So besides getting the phone, computer, anything technologically based, I don't know why I keep waving my phone like, I got one of those. I'm pretty hip. But besides that, if this sleep component, and I can speak from just my own personal anecdotal situations where if I get a good night's sleep, I can go like hard, like on these speaking tours, I can go. And I learned over time, I had to start the first assembly a little bit later in the day, so I could get the good night's sleep, but then also get the exercise in the morning to keep like a routine. But the sleep, oh my gosh, sometimes I'll like get, after a few months, I'll get like a night where I'm just so run down. I'll sleep like 12 or 14 hours. And I wake up the next day and I feel like I can run through the wall. I'm like, if I just slept 14 hours every night,
Everything would be
you're
great.
unstoppable. So what can parents do to help their teens, or what should teens be doing besides getting rid of the technology in the room to get on that regimen? What are there anything else out there?
I always say to my teens, I'm like, I know you're not a baby, but have a bedtime. And parents, you too. Overwhelming research shows going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time and getting that quality and quantity of sleep at the same time is really important. Now, research shows that you can't make up sleep, i.e. if you missed it, but I will tell you that anecdote that you just shared, I see all the time. And my kids on weekends, I always let them sleep in. I know parents are like, oh, they have to get up early, and that's fine if that's your parenting style. But for me, I'm like, I want you to get some sleep. I want you to restore your body and your mind. So going back to that. So having a bedtime and set an alarm for your bedtime. That may sound weird, but half an hour before your bedtime, start to close things down, be finished with things. A nightly ritual is really important. So dimming the lights, maybe taking a warm shower, reading, listening to music, meditating, something that's going to calm your mind and your body is going to be really helpful. What happens is if you keep pairing what you're doing with sleep, eventually your body says, oh, it's time to sleep. And it's just like Pavlov's dog. Remember good old Pavlov, right? He rang the bell and then he gave his dog food, right? And when he gave his dog food, salivating. And so then the dog started associating the bell with food. And so just ringing the bell caused the dog to salivate. We can use the same thing, and it's not just for dogs, it applies to people too. We can do the same thing in terms of priming our body to get ready for sleep. So like what I do is I usually dim the lights, I'll take a warm shower, and then I get in bed and read. And that all of that gets my mind off whatever is going on in my life, helps me relax, and then I can fall asleep much easier.
That reading is huge. That is so big.
And it can't be that good of a book, because there have been times where I'm like, this book is way too good, and I have to switch books. I have to get a boring book so that I don't want to stay up and read it. Yeah.
So none of your books is what you're saying.
Yes, my books are fascinating. No, I mean, I read
How many do you have again? It's gonna make me feel bad about myself, but let's do it. How many of those back there are yours?
These are mine up here. Oh yeah, those are too. I have one in Japanese, English, Spanish.
Is it double digits? Are you over 10? Is it over 10 books?
No.
Okay.
I have 4, well, kind of 5, and then I have I made a treatment planner with my mentors. I love my mentors. So that's used in like psychology programs.
Love it. Okay, so you brought up the stat earlier about the rise of self-harm. And this is something, another things that have been coming up a lot in this past week, in the last couple of weeks, and we've talked about it at length before. In some of these situations, it seems like these kids are so dead set on ending things, on terminating it all, and they are being taken to these facilities where they're plugged in for a week or a month. But in these situations I'm talking about, it was more short term, and they get there and then they take another attempt on their life in these different things. And it's talking to these people, it feels like an almost powerless situation. What can you do if you have a kid on your hands who is just dead set on trying to take their life, And, you know, you're obviously as a parent doing everything that you can to prevent that. But it's like, oh, they go there and then they try something else. They try something, they're just trying and trying and trying. Like, do you have any just like practical advice or maybe just some words of hope? Because I know in from what I've learned, just having hope is so much of a important thing.
Yeah, the biggest predictor of suicide or even a suicidal attempt is hopelessness. Hopelessness means I don't think it's ever going to get better. And a teen brain is very much, as what I was learned, is very much in the here and now. It feels horrible now. It's never going to get better. And so, you know, one of the things I often say to my kiddos when they are really upset, empathize. I don't say it's not that big of a deal because it's a huge big deal to them. I also always remind them. So I empathize, and then I always remind them, you know that it's going to get better, right? And I need them to not just hear it, but know it's going to get better. Does it suck now? Excuse me. Yeah, it does. It does. And empathizing with them, and it will get better. I always say life is up and down, right? Look at our lives. Sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down. Sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down. If you're in a down spot, if you wait, things will go up. It's just the law of life, right? And so reminding our children that there are also resources. Hope is a skill that can be taught. And so learning that skill, oh gosh, I think it's called Project Hope. Hold on, I'm on the board, so I should know. It used to be called Project Hope. Well, I can't see anything because we all know I can't see anything. I don't know. We could share it sometime, but anyway, it's a whole curriculum that is used in schools, but you can also read it and incorporate it into your daily life and with your children. And it's free, all free, of how to cultivate hope. So that's one thing. The other thing that I'm seeing a lot of lately, and I was talking to a psychiatrist friend. I don't know if he's a psychiatrist. Yeah, I think he's a psychiatrist. I know he does a lot of mental health stuff. He said that one of the other biggest predictors that he's seeing now, and I haven't seen too much research on this, but he sees it frequently in his private practice, is loneliness.
I believe that.
Of suicide. So these kiddos who are in a relationship and then the relationship ends, be super aware that this is a time when a lot of, you know, there's an increase in likelihood that someone's going to think, I don't want to be here anymore. We just a couple months ago had an event where this lovely young boy, I mean, you know, of course he was the nicest kid. I mean, everyone knew him. I even knew of him. Like that's how nice and kind and thoughtful he was. Girlfriend broke up with him. And here's the other thing to be aware of. I forget the stat, but the majority of, I don't remember the exact number, but the majority of people who have a suicide attempt, it's 5 minutes from when they first thought about it to when they do it. So this impulsive brain that these teens have, we want to be really aware. You want to have conversations with your teen. And by the way, if you are afraid that your teen is thinking about hurting themselves, a lot of times people will say, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to put the idea in their head. If you're thinking that they've already had the thought. So you asking about it in an empathetic and loving way is not going to put that thought in their mind of, oh, I hadn't thought of that. That's a great idea. So you can ask, I'm really concerned about you. Are you thinking about hurting yourself? And hopefully you will not be judgmental as you're thinking that. Remember in the video of teens who interpret concern as being judgmental. So be really aware of resting face, be really aware of what you're communicating. And you can even say something like, this is not judgment. I care so much about you. So that they can really hear your empathy and love.
Communication. Communication. It's so big. And that's I feel like why so many parents are frustrated is they really, and we talk about this all the time, but that wall, like barrier that seems to be between a lot of teens and their parents. And that seems like kind of just a natural thing of like, you know, rolling their eyes. And that's one of the big frustrations of like, hey, like, I don't know if they want to listen to me. Like, it seems like they're real short with me. They don't want to tell me about their day. And here you are, the most caring person that would give anything for them, right? To be happy, to be successful, to be confident, to be fulfilled. And, you know, they just, you know, it's not cool. Mom and dad's not cool. And That's why I love and in part with what we're doing is like, hey, it's not that we're saying anything different than you're saying. We're just a different messenger, and we bring in different people
Yeah.
who they might be like, oh, this person's not my dad, and he's saying the same thing as my dad, and I like, I always say Dwayne the Rock Johnson. So it's like, I feel like he's the most likable guy out there. But it's like he said it, and he's saying the same thing as my dad, so I guess my dad must be right. And to be able to
I
kind of,
don't know that any teens ever like realize, oh, my dad actually said that. Usually they just like, oh yeah, The Rock says it. But
yes, yes,
you know,
yes.
I will say too, and this is what came to mind. Tu fais un bon travail, right? If I said that to you, what would that mean to you?
Say it again.
Tu fais un bon travail.
Oh, okay. So I thought I had a bad connection, but you are speaking another language, and to me that means
Yeah.
gibberish.
So what I said was, you're doing a good job.
Hmm.
I was speaking in my language, not your language. So what does that mean? As parents, our kids want to speak a different language. This goes into love languages, which, we could talk an hour and a half about because it's so delicious. This goes into their love languages, but it also goes into respecting where they are, right? It doesn't mean they rule the house, but if they don't want to talk about their day as soon as they come home, you can respect that. Right. And then you can kind of figure out when is a good time for us to talk. I get if you don't want to, you just had a long day, you don't want to go into it. That's fine. When is a good time? Ask
Yeah.
those open-ended questions in a curious and loving and empathetic way, as opposed to judgment, because it's super easy to absorb when they're eye rolling and they're not listening. And then we get in the red zone. And then when we're in the red zone, oh, right. It's never a good thing. And then what our kiddos remember is that, that negative interaction, that what they felt was judgmental. And remember the 5-to-1 rule. For every 5 positives, it counters 1 negative. Every
Good.
5
Go on that.
positive. I'm sorry.
Go on that. What 5 positive?
So 1 negative. So if the negative is, you said you were going to clean your room, you didn't clean your room. I don't know, they may view that as negative. You need 5 positive touches, conversations, positive things to happen to cancel that out. But what happens is a lot of times as we're talking to our kids, we're giving feedback, we're telling them what they should do, which means what they did wrong. And so we're giving more of that. We're having less positive. And by the way, I'm not talking about giving someone a trophy for breathing either. Okay. So we're not praising like everything. Oh, you're 12 years old and you peed in the potty. Good job. Like, come on. But really focusing on some positive interactions that you can have. That's going to be really key. Hold on. My phone's going to ring and I didn't mean it to.
Is that your alarm for bedtime? Is it time for you to?
For me to go to bed.
For you to go. All right. Well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen.
Good night.
It sounds like being negative. If I'm gonna have, and you're saying to combat that, so like they're annoyed by you. It's on their bad side. But when you praise them now with 5 things, it's like, all right, mom's all right. Like
it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be praising them.
it's
It could
positive.
be positive. It could be like what I like to really focus on with my kiddos when I give them, praise or say something positive about them, is focusing on the values that I want them to emulate. Right. So instead of, great example, instead of good job on your test, right, it's, hey, you studied really hard for that. Great job. Right. So I'm pulling out that effort as opposed to just the outcome. I don't know if it's an athlete, great job. You made X amount of baskets. Or I noticed you used that new technique that you and your coach are working on. Well, what was that like? Right. Even see that, I'm not saying good job, but even that, it's a positive and it's asking them for their input. It's also helping to make that more intrinsic, because ultimately what we want is for motivation and reward to be intrinsic. They're doing it because they want to do it, as opposed to they're, concerned about getting in trouble for not doing it, for doing it. You know what I mean? Getting in trouble.
Yeah. Man, your kids did not stand a chance. I feel like they did not stand a chance. You're gonna mind ninja chop them with love and be so this is. Have you been able to walk the walk, or are you just talking the talk, Dr. E? But I feel like this
I will say 4 years ago at Christmas,
okay,
I had a complete red zone moment and completely lost it on one of my kids. I mean, just yelling, but not just, I was yelling at her, and it was so horrible for all of us. And I realized that I had been more red zoney with them than I even realized. And it was a huge wake up call to me. And really got me on this road in terms of being a better parent myself. So do I practice what I preach? Absolutely. Did I 4 years ago? Not all the time. I wasn't even preaching this 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I wasn't even, I wasn't even working with teens for you. I mean, I was working with athletes, but not like teens. So I've really gone through a big transformation myself as a parent. And I would be very comfortable having you interview both of my children to get feedback on that. But we have a really good relationship.
Yeah, I would love to hear their perspective on that. I'd be like, what was going on 4 years ago? How bad was she? How much of the red zone was she in? Is that what inspired this book? Is that what's going on here?
The reason why I wrote the book is because I wanted to answer the question, why do good people do bad things? Why do good people do bad things? I think I'm a pretty good person, right? But when I'm yelling at my kids, which, whatever I was upset about, can I understand why I was upset? Yeah. But did I have to go, be that red zoney? Heck no. So yeah, that's actually one of the reasons why I wrote the book.
And that's what I hate about today's world, to be a real positive couple motivational speakers here. Here's what sucks. Is like you have those moments, and today they can be documented, whether it's a video or usually I feel like that's the way, or a voicemail. People leave a bad voicemail or something, and their whole life is predicated to this one moment of when they were in this red zone state that we talk about all the time. And it's like, that was just one, like any person on a bad day might be rude to someone in the parking lot or at the grocery store. If you don't know what's going on with them. And we have this permanent thing. And that's what's scary for kids who don't realize, because I don't think most adults are good at dealing with it. But like, hey, one bad text message, one inappropriate, picture, one joke that you think is in your group text with your friends, you can't make those mistakes, it seems, in today's world, because people are very unforgiving and want to hold that against you. So I
will say, I think it is important as parents that when we are in the red zone, and we're human, so we will be, that when you are out of it, you apologize. And we've talked about the importance of apologizing for our bad behavior, because kids have the biggest BS meter. And if you are saying, you have to, you should be respectful all the time, and you're not being respectful, that doesn't make any sense, right? Why would they want to be respectful to you if they don't feel like you're being respectful to them? So it has happened since 4 years ago that I have been in the red zone. And I will say, if I'm good, I will say I'm in the red zone right now. I just need some space. And if I'm a little, knock on wood, I've only been a little, snippy. I haven't lost it. But then I will come back and say, I was being irritable with you. I was being short with you. And I apologize. That was a me thing. I was in the red zone. I'm in charge of my own behavior. I wasn't taking charge there. And I full-heartedly apologize. Take accountability. When you do that, first of all, that could be 5 positives right there, because it's so meaningful to kids that you show them that respect and that you walk the walk. The other thing is, since I started doing this, my kids will do this now. They will model our behavior. So when they get irritable, they'll be like, oh, I'm in the red zone right now. One time, one of my daughters was in the red zone. The other one was getting angry at her. And I said, wait a minute, we're all just in the red zone right now. Well, let's just take a break. And so, using this language is so beautiful. It gives us words to be able to communicate. It doesn't excuse our behavior, but it helps people understand and helps us understand. And by the way, it helps your kids understand, because remember, your kids have all this stuff going on in their heads and they don't even know what it is. And it's so stressful for them. That's why they're getting online and trying to diagnose it, because they don't understand that it feels like something must be wrong with them. And really, that's what a teenage brain is. And so if you can give them this language of red zone, we're not pathologizing. We're not saying clinical depression, panic disorder. We're just saying, if you're in the red zone, you want to take steps to get out of the red zone. And on a consistent basis, you want to do things that will help you stay out of that red zone.
I love it. Wise words from a wise woman. And I'm not gonna let you off the hook though. I want to run back to one thing that you mentioned because some people were asking about it here. When it comes to practicing that praise part versus
Yeah.
praying for the positive, as opposed to being like, why didn't you clean your room? Why didn't you do the laundry and that kind of thing? How do you do that praise effort and bring out what they did and let them ask the question? Could you kind of
What do
expound
you
on?
mean and let them ask the question?
I think it's I think they mean you know how a lot of times you'll rephrase things. You'll talk about how, well, what do you think this means? How long do you think you should have on
Mm.
social media? What time do you think your phone should go away? When it comes to that praise part, and bringing that in them, is there a way to kind of utilize having them come up with the question? I didn't ask the question. I'm not totally sure. That's what I think it means.
So I would, you know, if let's do cleaning the room, if they said they're going to do it, they can get rewarded for doing it. And we've talked to before about using phones for reward. So not now, but a while, I'm not going to talk about my daughter's bedroom right now, but a while ago, it was the girls, I have 2 daughters, the girls had to clean their rooms. And first of all, clearly define objectively what that means, because I would say, did you clean your rooms? They'd say yes, and I'd go in and it looked just as bad as before. Oh, no, I picked up blah, 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 blah. Okay, so now we have an objective definition of what a clean room is. All non-furniture off the floor. Now, does that mean sometimes there's a pile of clothes on the bed? Yeah, but this is our definition, right? So we know clearly what that definition is. And then they get rewarded for doing it, as opposed to punished for not doing it. You don't take their phone away if they don't do it. They get their phone if they do it. And so it was their responsibility to do that on a daily basis. When it was done, then they could get their phones. Asking questions. So I get that cleaning a room may not be the funnest thing in the world. I get that. How can you make sure that you do it? By when are you going to do it? How will you remember to do it? I say this to my kids all the time. They'll say they're going to do something. And I'll say, how are you going to remember to do that? Because sometimes teen brain, things go in, things go out. It's not that they're being malicious. It's not that they're being sneaky. They just forget it. So I have them put it in their phone. So you're going to clean your room at 3:45 today. Great. Why don't you put a timer on so that they have that?
Yep.
What's the other? Yeah. And then, maybe it was the intrinsic. How did it feel to put so much time, energy, and effort into studying? How did it feel when you've been really putting in all that extra training, in the gym? How did it feel to really play well today in their sport? So helping them, maybe that was what they were talking about in terms of the question, and helping pull out that, how did it feel? What was that like for you? And then again, really highlighting the value, perseverance, grit, determination.
I feel like that's something you hear about, and I think I maybe even had that a little bit with my dad, of like, no matter what you do, you always could have done better in regards to probably anything in life, but sports. And so what happens is you get in the car and yeah, you had a great game, you had three hits, but that other hit, you took your eye off the ball, you didn't sprint all the way out and run out the play or whatever. And so a lot of times parents focus on that thing, and it's not because the right intention, but bad practice, right? It's like they just want you to learn and get better. All that stuff was amazing and great, but here's the weakness and here's an area that you can improve. So it's kind of shifting, and how do we focus on the positive and then be like, well, what else could have, do you think you could have done better?
Let the coach be a coach. Don't be a coach parent. I'm sorry. Don't be a coach. The kids, I will tell you, I can't tell you how many of my athletes come in because they don't perform well. They perform better in practice versus competitions. And when I really ask what's happening, it's when one of their parents is there.
That
parent is going to be given the feedback in the car. Let the coach be the coach and you be the parent. Something that you can ask, this is what I ask a lot. What were you proud of? What did you do well? And then if you want, you could say, and what would you like to do differently next time? You're not telling them what they should do, because guess what? They know what they did wrong, right? They're fully aware of what they did. So have them come up with in an empowering way. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. And how can you do that? Right. And so giving it, and talk about teaching a problem solving brain. You're not telling them what they did well and what they should do, right? You're having them come up with that. And that's a gift to give our children, is that problem solving ability.
That settles it out. We're bringing you out to Phoenix, Arizona, Little League Baseball. You're talking to the parents. You're telling them to stop being idiots and model good behavior. And the kids, these kids they're 11 years old. They're looking over at their parent every 2 seconds for like approval. I just want to go and, I don't want to smack kids, and I don't want to smack anyone, but you just want to smack somebody like, hey, play the game. It's fun. It's a sport. 2%.
Remember the over-under principle?
Which one?
Remember the over-under principle for every hour over behavior there's a positive online make.
I think I have a teen brain still sometimes.
So when parents do this, behavior isn't great. Telling them what the kids should do. I know your underlying motivation is good. You want to help your children grow and learn. If you want your children to learn and grow, let the coach give the pointers. And you be there to support them so that you have this relationship with them and they feel safe with you. They don't feel like you're going to judge them all the time. The coach is going to give them that information. You can have them pull it out of their own minds because they already know. But if you really want to help your children, that empathy, that teaching the problem solving, that is going to be so powerful, so much more powerful than trying to shove another tidbit of information in their heads.
I love it. Dr. E, I want every single person in the world to follow you right now. What's the best place?
Well, you can go to Instagram since we're talking about that. It's at Dr. E. Lombardo.
I like how you had to think about it. You had to think about what it was because you got a strategist. So Dr. E. Lombardo on Instagram, we'll put it in the chat right now. And then
Elevive.
Elevive still the best place?
Thrive in life. Oh, have you been there lately?
The new, remodeled, updated, revised. Of course, I've seen it.
We have a whole website for teen mental health. We have a whole website for sports now and website for teen mental health for athletes.
Yay, so exciting.
And there's all kinds of resources too.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, you do not have a teen brain. You have a very big brain. And I mean that as a compliment. And I am a better person for having you in my life and getting this front row seat to your awesomeness and your heart as well. So thank you so much. We got the, we got it in the chat. Boom, awesome. We're good to go. People
Great. And thanks to you, Jesse, for doing these calls. I love that we get to do these together. And thanks to all the parents out there. I know you care so much. Have hope. Know that these are skills. And when you develop them and your teams develop them, it really helps you have a better relationship.
Wonderfully said. And real quick, where are you going next? You've been on the move a lot lately. Are you speaking anywhere?
I am gone starting Thursday. I'm gone every day this month, except for like 3 days. But someone is always at my house, so don't come rob it. I'm going to the Dominican Republic on Thursday. My girlfriend is getting married, and there's just some women who are going just to relax for a couple of days. Smart. And then I'm in Dallas. I come back 8 o'clock Sunday night, and I leave 9 o'clock Monday morning. I'm speaking in Dallas then.
Yay. Awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. As always, if you're a parent watching this live, if you're watching a recording of this, go to the attitudeadvantage.com and you can set a call with us and we can talk more about what is going on with your teen and their teen brain. That's it. See you later.
Right,
bye, everybody. Bye, Dr. E.
Bye.